We gave some away at the farmer's market. And
Good, thank you, appreciate it. Oh, shut our mouth.
Oh, well, you guys can talk. Just don't be like risque stuff, you know?
No, we didn't.
Shouldn't be, no gestures?
Yeah, no, we're on the seal, right, so they could just hear.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, no worries there, but just wanna touch in, we're all set.
Thank you so much.
Maybe.
we've got 14 minutes.
Okay. Well, this beats having to stand at the door. Might be getting COVID, yeah.
agreed to one over, doing that grade crossing.
We need
Like they just kind of.
five
Over,
foot
that's,
one.
Can you
I guess,
believe it, Jim?
if you wall it off enough.
So, you know,
Going under,
There's so
you'd
many
be doing like an ADA grade.
They're like great if you'll go
Or we have to
to
separate.
no, this one is just straight.
Limit would you have it at?
Straight, three, five.
things I say, you know,
We
so.
don't know what they're trying to. You still do it, we can't vote on, we can't vote on minutes. That's the only thing we have to vote on.
Cause even like under.
Pretty much. Well, actually, no, we can't start the meeting
While you're
Can we start the meeting?
because we can't vote on the
Can't start
agenda.
the meeting at
Oh,
all.
yeah, we can't vote on the
It's gotta be 9 or something, it's real close.
Yeah, that's what I asked last time, because we had Dylan
Somewhere, it's been a long
presenting at Paul's
But-
at that time.
Right.
I've had one.
Kinda nice, but it's,
Technically.
One
There's another person that
I
we
purchased. Oh, we, this.
Just making sure.
So we, I kind of just threw it.
How are you doing? Wouldn't happen, you did.
Fine. That's it.
That's it, okay.
Nope, I'm just moving it for you.
Is it 5 o'clock yet?
501.
Pros and cons of electric buses, and whether it's better or whether it's worse. You know what? Kids just walking by, you know, and I muttered it under my breath, and then they were like.
Okay, looks like it's
5:01,
5:01.
and we have a
And-
quorum.
We have a quorum.
Mhm.
So I'm going to call this meeting of the Mesilla Valley MPO Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities Advisory Committee to order. If we can have a roll call.
Sure. Ashley Curry,
Present.
Andrew Bencomo, Albert Casillas.
He's just walked in the room.
Oh, he did, okay. So you're here. Okay, good. And Mr. Love is too. Okay. Jim Wilcox,
Present.
Harold Love.
Here.
Okay. Jack Kirby, Rob McGillivray,
Here.
Gary Sheldon,
Here.
and Mr. Chair.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes, additions to the agenda? Or subtractions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Jim Wilcox. I'd like to add something at the very beginning related to a moment of silence for people who have perished on the highway since our last meeting. That would be a proposal that I would tender and have the committee decide whether or not they wanted to enact that.
Well, we can't actually add to the agenda at this point, but during the committee member comments, if you can bring that forward, then we probably do a minute action or direct staff and see if we're agreeable, if there's consensus for that.
Sure.
So I'll hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Ashley Curry, so moved.
Rod McGilvery, second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Next is approval of the minutes for October 18th. I have a couple of comments that I saw on the minutes. On page 6, line 20, it didn't show who was speaking, but you can tell from the context, except it says, this is Andrew Array. It's in a mathematical array, so it needs to indicate that it's Mr. Ray speaking and spell his name there correctly. And the other is a typo or misspelling. On page 18, line 35, Senator Heinrich's name is not correct, so. Since we're going to ask him favors, we should make sure that we spell his name correctly. Anybody else have any comments on the minutes?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have an addition. Under members present, I was present.
Anybody else? So that one is certainly an amendment. So I'll hear a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Albert Casillas, I move to approve the minutes of October 18th.
Do we have a second?
Ashley Curry, second.
So I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of October 18th as amended. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Public comment is our next item. Do we have any member of the public that wishes to comment? We'll move on to discussion items, MPO updated bylaws presentation.
Yes, at this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Katarina Provingi to give the presentation on Traffic County. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. It's Don McGloy for the Mesilla Valley MPO. And this will be just basic rundown of all the changes that have happened in the bylaws that were approved by the policy board.
So you've changed, Katerina.
So we're just going to basically go over the basics for this committee, the Open Meetings Act, the proxy provision, and then what we're going to update in the binders in January. So there are 11 members of the BPAC, 6 citizens, 5 staff representatives. As you know, the 6 citizens, you've applied for these positions. It's through an open call for candidates. This has now been codified in the bylaws. Anytime there's an open position on the citizen side, call for candidates will be sent out. And then when the call for candidates closes, if we have enough candidates, we will present it to the policy board. The policy board will make a decision on who to appoint to the BPAC. Then we have 5 staff. They're appointed by the jurisdictions. In the case of the town of Mesilla, it's the mayor, the county, and the city are the county manager and the city manager. Then there are 3 offices still. It's the chair and the vice chair. Those are voted on by the committee at the beginning of every year. And then there's a secretary position that is filled by the MPO officer. In this case, Mr. Ray. To have a meeting, we need at least 5 members present. The voting methods are by raising your hand, by rising, by roll call, or acclamation. Ties are considered failed action items. And then basically this committee reviews all major work products except for the annual listing of obligated projects. And that is just due to the fact that the annual listing of obligated projects is something that the TAC actually implement. So they're the ones that check it before we present it to the policy board.
Okay, I have a quick question on the quorum. At some point, we had requires at least 1 citizen member. Is that still the case? Or
Not at this time. It
Okay.
requires just 5 members.
okay.
That is something, though, that could be put down for the next time if we would like to look at that. So we have the Open Meetings Act governs how this board this board addresses the public. So it's required in the state of New Mexico when formulating public policy, developing any type of rules, regulations, or ordinances, discussion of public business, and then taking action with an authority of the body. It prohibits basically conferring privately, so emails, such like that, of agenda items. So if you receive an agenda with items on it, you're not supposed to talk about it until we get to the meeting. And this also helps prohibit rolling quorums, which would be one person talking to another person, until there's a quorum of people that are able to basically vote on it. Because there's sunshine law, so all public business must be discussed in the public.
Point of clarification. I understand, but I've been told, I don't know if this is accurate, but I've been told there's a distinction between those public bodies which are elected and who confer and make decision versus those public bodies that are appointed by that group, such that a committee such as ourselves is not directly beholden to the public, that the people who are subject to rolling quorums are those who have been elected by the public. And the distinction is that we make decisions, but they're non-binding. They must be approved by those who are elected by the public. Do you know of any such distinction?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, as it is told to us by our legal counsel, it is considered that rolling quorums here do apply.
Okay. And I'm not going to contest that in this particular situation, but I have some legal opinion, I guess we call legal opinion, from an Open Meetings Act group that wants fair and open meetings with public bodies. And this person said that groups such as ourselves are not subject to the rolling quorum provision. But I'm not going to impede this decision at this time. I'll do some additional research and see if I can get back for your attorneys to consider.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, if you'd like to please forward us that information, and we will move it to our legal counsel and see what their interpretation of it is.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, we also have a proxy provision. So if you have to be absent for some reason, a proxy member can be appointed for a, they have to be for the appointed positions from the various jurisdictions. It does need to be an employee of the appointing agency. For the citizen reps, the individual would need to have the appropriate expertise, and also the hope would be that they would be from wherever your seat is from. So if you're the town of Mesilla seat, you would hope the person is from the town of Mesilla so that they can give that viewpoint. If it's in a large seat, then it can be pretty much anybody with the expertise. It does not count as an absence. It's available up to 3 times per year. The only requirement is written notice to the committee chair and the MPO officer.
Point of clarification. Is there a time frame for written notice to be delivered to the chair and MPO officer?
As long as it's before the meeting. So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, so basically up to the day of the meeting, as long as it's not like 4:55 when everybody's already here, it would be okay to do that, say at like noon Tuesday, noon Tuesday, because BPAC meetings are always on Tuesday. You find out you have an emergency come up, and you ask somebody, they say, yes, I'll proxy for you. You could send us an email, quick email. Hey, sorry, I'm not going to be here at today's meeting. Mr. So-and-so will be filling in for me. And
Is this presentation open to a motion to amend?
so in this case, these are the bylaws that are approved by the policy board.
And are we to approve them too?
We already did.
Sorry. Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
We recommended,
We recommended, okay, we didn't approve.
Which is
Okay,
our-
thank you.
and written includes email,
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
and the bylaws were clearly amended to reflect that.
Yes, sir. So when we update the MPO, we're calling the MPO Basics binders, we're going to also add in the new joint powers agreement, as well as these new bylaws, which will go into effect on January 1st. Any type of memorandum of agreements that the MPO has between different entities, at this time we only have one between the Mesilla Valley MPO and Roadrunner Transit, but as others come up, we will put those into the binders as well. The Open Meetings Act, as it is governing of some of the things that happen on this body. We're going to update all the committee rosters, as well as a few other things. As things come up, we will go ahead and put those into the binders as well. So in the new year, We're going to update the binders, and you can have these either in paper or, if you prefer, it can be done electronically as well. And then they go into effect on January 1st, and I'll now stand for comments and questions.
Any further questions? Hearing none, thank you. Move on to the MPO traffic count program presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That will be presented by Ms. Katerina Provingi.
Hi, my name is Katerina Provengi with the Mesilla Valley MPO, and I'm going to be presenting to you guys all the traffic counts program. Oop. There we go. So when we calculate the annual average daily traffic, this is the number that we're trying to achieve or calculate from each segment that we do counts on. I'm sure you've seen them before, where it's two black tubes that are lined up across the road. At one point, either you've seen them or you have driven over them before. So this is the number that we're trying to calculate that our engineers and both with the city and NMDOT use. So it's an estimation of the average volume of traffic in a segment of a roadway. The data is collected from IRDs. I have a gray box position where I was sitting. Those are the IRDs. These are the boxes, when we say traffic count boxes, this is what we're referring to. They are self-sufficient. They have a solar charger on them, and we do charge them as well. This is what we use to measure to get our numbers.
So they've shrunk over the years.
Yes. Well, actually, there are two different, well, I'll get into that in a second. They have two different kinds. So the method that we use is called the AASHTO method. This method we use because it's the most unbiased. So the AAD that's calculated using this method, it reduces the bias as much as possible. And when I say bias, I mean by the day of the week, the time of the year specifically. And so that's why we use the AASHTO method. And it gives us a proper or a true average for that road segment. So traffic count collections, like I mentioned before, we have two different kinds. We have our permanent traffic counters, and we have our short duration. That's the IRDs, the traffic count boxes. The permanent ones were installed by NMDOT. That is how we get our seasonal factors and our daily factors. That's what we base those on the data collected from those permanent boxes. The short duration, 50 hours. So the kind of data that we collect using these are the volume, the speed, and the classification. Classification meaning the type of vehicle based on axle length. So overall, within our jurisdiction, we have 508 total traffic counts that are completed in a 3-year cycle. So every year we complete up to 170 counts per year, and again, every 3 years. When we complete the collecting traffic counts for that year, we do upload the data into our interactive traffic flow map. That is on our website. This is basically with this, when you click on a road segment with your mouse, with your cursor, you can see all of the past AADTs that we have collected and calculated from the past several years. It has both the year and the AADT that designated to that year. So this is the vicinity that we work in, where we collect the traffic counts. So in the map we have all of Doña Ana County, but we are within that red boundary, as you can see. That includes the town of Mesilla, the city of Las Cruces, and a fairly large portion around us of Doña Ana County. So when we go out into the field, this is how the setup will look. This is a complete setup. We have the, let me see, do I have the mouse? Yes, I do. So we have the IRD on this side, and we always try to attach it to or secure it to a large sign. We rarely use any of the electrical poles or light poles, or sometimes light poles. If we cannot find a proper sign, we have used trees before as well. We try to not damage them at all. So the IRDs are on one end, and then we have our two rubber tubes that are secure on the opposite end. So when we arrive at our site, we have a clipboard where we collect all of our data. We collect the name of the main street that we're measuring, along with the segment of that street. So several streets like Loman are broken up into many different segments based on from a collector to another collector. And then we write down our start time, we write down the day, the time. We also write down, we rate the road and the bicycle lane and the sidewalk, if those are present. In the rating system that we use, so 10 would be near perfect, it was just built. A rating of 7 does have some cracks, but they are sealed. It does have some, it has been repaired in some way. Rating 4, many cracks, not much has been repaired. And of course, a rating 1 is the lowest condition-wise, where it is very beat up. It is almost not able, you're not able to drive on. And so with this data, we do put it into our traffic count box before we set it up. So again, like I mentioned before, we do attach it or secure it to a pole of some kind of device, in case weather, animals, or sometimes people, they cannot take it. We chain it up with a lock and chain. Then after that's secure, we take the tubes and carry them across the street. They are 10 feet apart. This is how we are able to determine the axle length. So as we install it into the ground, we use a drill. We take basically masonry nails, and we secure it with a washer, and we call them figure eights. It's a little metal tie. And we always have someone watching traffic, always watching traffic, and throughout the whole process. So like I said, we do make sure, we always keep an eye on traffic. If we have to move the person, if we have to move over, we do. In the end, on this side, when we anchor it on the opposite side of the IRD, this is the final result. So we do have the tube taped off at the end, so no air will escape. We have it secure with it's a little hard to see, but there is a metal loop that is securing it, and then the washer and nail is in. You can see you can see the figure eight right here. And we try to make sure that it's tight enough to where the machine will be able, the traffic box will be able to pick up the air pressure, the air that is moved throughout the tube. And again, like I said, this is the complete setup. In the end, we also secure the tubes in the middle the same way, except it's not the end, it's the middle, using the same loops. We do that on the same side as the IRD boxes. And then we take the tubes and we attach it to the side of the IRD box. So in the end, this is what our raw data, this is the raw data that we receive from the IRD box before we process it and make it look nice and pretty in an Excel sheet. Sorry, I need to be able to see. So this is an example of this is the classification. So if you look at the top here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All the different types of vehicles are classified into numbers. And then over here, in the 1, 2, 3, 4th column, that is the time that the data was collected. We measure this in 15-minute intervals or increments. And so what I just showed you, the raw data for the classification, we process it and put it into a nice, very easy to read Excel sheet. So like I said, over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the time over here. And then, of course, these are the different classifications of vehicles that we divide this up into. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. So channel 1, channel 2 traffic. Channel 1 is going to be one of the tubes that the traffic will hit first, and then channel 2 is the second tube. And then, like I said before, the seasonal factors, the daily factors. Seasonal factor, it changes per month. The daily factor changes per day. Normally, we put out our counters on Mondays and Tuesdays, so we're allotted to get 2 days of data, and in case anything does happen and we have to put it out Wednesday, we can collect it. We should still be able to get our 2 days worth of data. We collect them usually on Thursdays and Fridays. The AADT factor that was given to us by NMDOT. So all of these go into account of our final AADT number. That's what this is. We also separate it into non-truck traffic and truck traffic. It's just the data separated from classes 1 to 4, and then anything 5 and up is considered truck traffic. This was data that Mr. Taylor had presented earlier this year with the traffic truck map. This was the data that he was using for each segment. And then on the right over here, we have the road condition rating, so we do take that into account as well. This one is a bit old. It doesn't, the numbers were, I think the numbers weren't there yet. So at least that was, I guess that was an older one, but yes. And in the end, with the, along with this data, with the classification, we also have our graph that will show us different peak hours in our volume. And so this, and again, this is divided up into 15-minute increments, as you can see. We also process the speed. Usually the raw data of the classification and the raw data of the speed are what we usually send off to NMDOT. So as you can see, again, the same thing. We measure every 15 minutes. And then this is how we group up the speed. So on this segment, Loman, Telsure to Nacho, it's 35 miles an hour. And then we basically find the percentage of each different group of different speed limits or speeds. And then we have an overall, basically who's going, how much or what percentage of our traffic is going over the speed limit. And it's 5 miles an hour and over, or even 10 miles an hour and over. And as you can see there. So with this data, we, of course, we implemented, like I said at the beginning, into our interactive traffic flow map. These can also be used for model calibration, comparing the volumes of traffic at different road segments or roads, for, again, reporting to NMDOT and reporting to, it gets reported to the FHWA. We also use these to to look at our safety performance measures that was presented last meeting. And then, of course, freight monitoring, so the traffic truck counts, as we presented before. And that's it. I will now stand for questions, comments.
Okay, I guess I'll have a couple to ask you about. On the seasonal factor and the daily factor, are those just numbers that you get from some authority someplace, so that like Monday is some number and Tuesday is some other number?
Mr. Chair, so going back to the permanent counters at the beginning, these tall ones, so these were installed by NMDOT, and NMDOT took the data from these, and they gave us the seasonal and the daily factors, along with the our own state's AADT factor.
Okay, so somehow they derive it based on continuous counts, so they can adjust because of
Yes,
the permanent.
long-term traffic counts, essentially.
Okay. So on a multi-lane road, do you only count one side? Because in your picture, you showed a 2-lane road, but then you were talking about Loman, which is 6 all the way across. You must only count 3 lanes at a time on those. Is that true?
Those are, Mr. Chair, those are the special areas where for those we use two traffic count boxes. And we program it because we can program it as traffic going, let's say this is a two-way. We program it and tell it, okay, we have two directions, one going this way, one going that way. And then when we do the two box counts, we program it. So one box will measure all of the eastbound and one box will measure all the westbound or north and south. So with those, we do have a different, basically template that we plug into and it's the same.
So the final number is just one number for that segment of road still.
It combines it. So we have, essentially, like I said, we have go back to there we go. So we have channel 1 traffic, channel 2 traffic. So with Lowman, it has a very large median in the middle. We will go ahead or we can use the sides, different sides of Lowman. Actually, on Lowman, on the larger parts. So we'll put the two boxes in the median, and one box will only measure one side. Let's say westbound traffic. So westbound traffic will be all placed into channel 1 traffic. Eastbound traffic will be placed into channel 2 traffic. So one box measures west, one box measures east. And it's the same concept. We just, we have a different Excel sheet for processing that.
Okay, but what ends up on the map though is just one number.
Correct.
Okay. And then in the interactive map, you only have that one number at the different segments. Would it be possible to include some of this other information that you have, like the percentage of cars going over the speed limit, then the percentage of truck traffic and vehicle traffic, those kind of things?
For the interactive traffic flow map, it's only for the AADTs. For the other information, Mr. Loya?
Mr. Chair, Dominic Loya for Mesilla Valley MPO. So that is something that is in discussion as to how we would display that data. We are looking into it, but it is not something that's going to be, it's still in the works, basically. It's going to take a while for us to figure out how we're going to do it exactly so that we don't overload the map as well, because you can end up overloading the map and then people look at it and we've got a bunch of numbers just thrown at people.
Right. Yeah, I guess the way I would visualize it is that you would have that ADT number on it, but you could click on it and that would open a little box that would give you more of these additional details. But as knowing that data is there, it'd be important in the discussion for traffic safety and speeding what those percentages are. That's valuable information that I think is probably just buried away that we can't really get to. That's probably, how true is that?
Mr. Chair, so actually anytime the engineers ask for the data, we usually send the speed data along with it so that they have an idea, they have the full picture of how the roadway is operating. When Mr. Lee or Mr. Skelton asks us, they usually do, they ask for both. So it's especially with safety, even the engineers in the private sector will ask, they usually only ask for one, but we do tend to send both so that they have the full picture.
Okay, because while we were doing the road diet on Alameda, the police department put up a speed, one of those radar devices, and they collected that data there, but I wasn't aware that there might also be more systematic collected over the years that might have the same kind of information.
Mr. Chair, I have seen some of the raw data that the police department has collected. They do a very different method. Theirs, I believe, they don't do it hourly. They don't do it in 15-minute increments. They just do it daily. So it's still data. It's just not as precise as the data that we've collected, where you can literally pinpoint the time that people are speeding, or things like that. Yes, sorry, yes, I trailed on.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. How do you define traffic?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, traffic is both vehicular and non-vehicular. In our traffic counts program, we specifically focus on vehicular traffic with cars.
Okay, so what happens to like bicycles?
In the past, we have tried to do bicycle traffic counts, but there were issues. I believe it was the infrared was not as accurate as it could be. I'm gonna go ahead and forward this to Mr. Loya because he was physically present when this was going on.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, Dominic Loy from MPO staff here. So there's a couple of different ways to do bicycle counts and pedestrian counts. Unfortunately, with the type of devices that are available right now, it's infrared. So if you put it across a trail to count people on a trail or a sidewalk, the infrared beam itself can go into the street, and if it hits a car door, it'll count that as a person. So we haven't found a good way yet to be able to monitor those better. I mean, because it'll count a bush. If you have bushes around the deal, it'll count every motion of the branch as a person walking by. So it is something we're looking into and trying to figure out how to, especially on trails, how to take care of.
So do we have a way to flesh out the difference between, how much is vehicular, motorized traffic and how much is bicycles?
With Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, with these boxes, we do not. Any bicycle actually that rolls over it would be put in the motorcycle category.
Would be in what?
Motorcycle category.
Okay.
Because it doesn't have the weight.
Or could we have it, the motorcycle rolls over, it's in the bicycle category?
Mr. Chair,
You have to
Mr.
go
Rollins,
back to
either
your
way.
picture of vehicle types, and bicycle's not part of those.
Oh, okay.
So, but the boxes are sensitive enough to pick up bicycles. We found out. It's just there's no way to distinguish them between the bicycles and motorcycles.
Well, it sounds like what you said is that you're working on a way to improve that, is that correct?
That is correct. We're still looking into different methods on being able to flush out the two different bicycles, especially specifically in the street, and then of course counting pedestrians on trails.
Do you think it would be reasonable to have updates on a regular basis, like twice a year on that process?
That would be a question for Mr. Ray. I will forward that on to him and
Okay.
have him get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Mr. Chair, Ashley Curry, I have just a question. Looking at the vehicle count box that's the permanent installation and seeing it impeding the width of the sidewalk, is there any way that we can kind of put forth something to not be taking room from the sidewalks when we're installing boxes? So it's not that one. The other one that had the seasonal one that you were talking about?
Let's see. Wait. Am I going the wrong way?
That one.
This one. Oh, this one?
Yeah. See, it just takes up room from the sidewalk. So if there's somebody in a wheelchair or a stroller, it just becomes a problem. And I just see it all over our routes in this community. I mean, and if that's installed by DOT, can we put forth something that they don't put them in the middle of the sidewalk?
Actually, I'm going to direct that to Mr. Loya.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Curry. So that would be, trying to think of which, I believe that would be the Data Management Bureau. Mr. Love is shaking his head. You would need to put in a request to them to have stuff like that moved. Looking at that though, and this is just purely a guess on my part, the box is probably at the edge of the right-of-way. And which is the reason why it is exactly where it's at in most cases. They may have more right-of-way in there, but that would be something that would have to be looked into.
Thank
So
you.
the sidewalk would have to have at least 3 feet of usable space in order to even have that box there. Is that correct? ADA is 3 foot, is not the minimum?
Mr. Chair, so actually that box was put in probably at a much earlier time. That's on Compo Street. So depending on when they put it in would be as to how much space is there.
So, Mr. Chair, I was curious about this because I thought about this earlier. What's the challenge around getting a property owner to allow an incursion of a couple of feet so that you can move that into off the sidewalk? Is that ever done?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, it is done at times, but for MDT's process, I would let Mr. Love speak to that as to how they would go about doing something like that.
It depends on the property owner. We've had situations where we've had very cooperative property owners allow us to encroach in their property to be able to do safety improvements like that. And then we've had other situations where property owner wasn't willing to cooperate. So then, go ahead.
Do we offer to pay them for that amount of space?
Yes,
Okay.
usually.
Because I know there's another one for pedestrians. I don't want to get off track here, but since we're on the topic of right-of-way, there's another one on the east side of El Paseo near Idaho where there's a ADA ramp coming off the street, and about 10 feet later, there's a telephone pole in the middle of the sidewalk and a telecommunications, I think it's an abandoned telecommunications box. So I've noticed that one. Yeah, I don't know what else you can do if the property owners don't want the extra take up their part of their space, but I don't know what the answer to that is, but I appreciate the city when they look into it.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Love.
See none. Thank you for that. That was very informative. We're on to committee and staff comments. City of Las Cruces, do you have anything for us?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Gary Skelton with the City of Las Cruces. I've got an update on the bike and pedestrian infrastructure improvements for Madrid Avenue and Walnut Street. Apparently, there is an issue with the metal and steel that have been spec'd for the project not meeting the Buy America Act requirements. Several or many of the water and sewer utility items that are spec'd for the project containing metal do not meet the requirements for the act. This is forcing them to research and find acceptable substitutions for these items. And apparently it's been very difficult with supply being limited right now. So bottom line, until they can get the materials, replacement materials approved for the project's on hold until they can get all the materials approved for the project. At that time, they'll start the project.
Mr. Chair, I have a question about the metals. Is that structural challenges, or is it that they leach a certain type of chemical or something off the metal, or something else?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, I'm not really sure. I'm not privy to what the individual items are for the project. I know that it was stated are related mostly to the water and sewer utility systems. So I assume they'll be integral in the parts that are being used to construct those items, but I don't know the specifics behind them and what requirements aren't being met.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Maybe at our January meeting, we can hear that that's been resolved or not. Doña Ana County,
Yep, Chair, I have no comments today.
Town of Mesilla,
Rod McGilvery, Town of Mesilla. Calle del Norte Phase 2. The lower section is almost complete, probably anticipated being complete within the next couple of weeks. We did finally hear from IBWC. We had our signatorial stuff sent back to them. We're just waiting for the commissioner to sign it. We've done the change order, and we have a start date, I believe, of January 2nd for the La Llorona Trail connection. So we're on schedule, or back on schedule, thanks to getting an extension from MMDOT. Nothing further.
Okay, well, that's good news on that project. NMSU is not here, and Las Cruces Public Schools.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much. I think my only comment is if the city can communicate to the school district about that Madrid Walnut project, since it affects the school, and we had a meeting on site at the school. So I don't know if you can pass that on to the project lead, just to send out an email to the team regarding that change, that would be great. And then just on behalf of the city also that affects the schools is just, there's a public meeting on Thursday night at 5:30 in City Hall 2007B, and that is for the North Rise Sonoma Roadrunner, the project up by Sonoma Elementary to put in the traffic light. So I think that affects kind of pedestrian issues in that area there. Are you?
I assume you're talking about the new traffic light for North Rise and
Yeah.
Sonoma Ranch. Okay.
The Sonoma Ranch and North Rise. So that's it. So yeah, other than that, and then I think just on behalf of the school district, I'll also just say we'll be presenting on December the 12th. City Council is going to have a pedestrian focus group at the City Council meeting, the work session. And I'm just inviting anybody who has an interest in pedestrian issues to go talk to City Council about the direction that we want to move forward with pedestrian safety needs in our community. So that's at the city, and that's December 12th at 1 o'clock, City Hall. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. MPO staff updates.
Michael McAdams, NPO. We have one update, and that is we have a vacant position on the Pedestrian Advisory Board. But the deadline will be December 31st. This position can only be from the unincorporated area of Doñana County within the MPO area. And the email or written notice has to be sent to Andrew Ray.
Okay, thank you. So if anybody knows anybody that lives in the county that would serve on this board, please ask them to make an application. Okay, thank you. So we're on to committee members' updates. I guess I'll start with, there were a couple of good letters in the Sun News, Sunday's edition. One from Scott Kaiser, and I think one sentence characterized that pretty well. The simple act of crossing the street should not be a life or death decision. And so that's something that I think we should take to heart and try to improve our bike and pedestrian safety as much as we can. I think that's all I have. Anybody?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have something, as I alluded to earlier. I would like to propose a motion that we recognize a moment of silence for the two individuals who were recently died on our streets. This motion is to offer a moment of silence and is not intended to cast causation or anything like that, just a moment of silence for the situation where people can basically risk their lives trying to traverse our area. I would like to put that motion on the table.
Mr. Loyal?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, I don't believe you need to do a motion for that. If the committee decided they wanted to have a moment of silence, I believe they could do that now. If you would need to, if you would choose to put it on, say, the agenda for a regular thing, that would be something that we would need to bring back at a later date.
Mr. Chair, maybe you could, using your authority and power to offer that as something we do without a vote. It's up to you.
Well, is that agreeable to the committee? We just add after the call to order, just a moment of silence or,
Well, I'm talking about now for this meeting, not for a future agenda item.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, that should be fine if you would request a motion of silence now. It should not violate anything.
okay. So we'll have a moment of silence, I suppose, for the recent pedestrian fatalities in the MPO area. And then with any other committee members? Or do you have
I
anything
have
further,
one,
Mr.
since it's
Wilcox?
kind of been clarified to me, and I appreciate the clarification. Maybe we could decide whether we want to, oh, sorry. Sorry, maybe we could decide whether we want to put that on as an ongoing recognition, should we have any future fatalities.
Do you have comment?
No, I'm going to
Mr.
clear
Wick?
myself. No, it's up to the committee, I think.
Rod McGilvery, Town of Mesilla. I don't see it as necessary. I think we have the liberty to do that at any time we want, just by making a recommendation, just like you did today, sir.
That seems reasonable to me.
I skipped NMDOT updates, didn't I?
Harold Love, NMDOT. We only have one active project in the area, and that is the pavement preservation from I-25 from mile 14 to 24, Radium Springs area. I was just out there this morning. They're putting down the permanent striping. And so they should be done here. I'm saying in a couple of weeks, they should be completed with the project.
Okay,
That's all I
sorry.
have.
Sorry, I skipped over that. And I guess I'll ask my, on the I-25 capacity study, is there any schedule yet for when there will be the public input sessions or how that's continuing?
And talking with our consultant, we've narrowed it down that we will have some kind of public meeting in December.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee members? See none. Public comment. Opportunity for public comment. See none. I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Ashley Curry, so moved.
I second that.
We
Jim
have a
Wilcox.
motion and a second to adjourn without objection. We're adjourned.